Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you so much for joining our seminar session, Networking Works, How to Build Relationships to Build Your Business and Boost Your Career. Please welcome public speaking coach, trainer, and author, Lisa Braithwaite.
Thank you. Super excited to be here. Happy to see you all here today. Before we jump in, I want to ask you a couple questions, and I would like you to type in the chat. First of all, if you love networking, I would like you to type love into the chat, okay? If you tolerate networking, if networking is okay with you because you know it's a necessary evil of being in business, type okay in the chat, okay, right? And if you would rather have a root canal than go to a networking event, then I would like you to type tooth in the chat. Okay, so this will give me a little sense of who's in the room, and thank you for doing that. So I think you're here because you know that networking is an important tool, right? We all need to make connections. We want to build trust, and when others trust and recommend us, it goes much farther than just promoting ourselves. You may have heard of the know, like, and trust factor, and that's what networking brings us when we have these one-to-one conversations. As a business professional, it doesn't matter whether you're in a nonprofit, whether you work for yourself or you're in a for-profit, you are responsible for making your organization look good. Unfortunately, many of us don't really pull that off, are not representing our organizations very well. So I have another thing for you to type into the chat. If you have ever experienced any of these networking faux pas, please type yes in the chat. Okay. You've been talking to somebody at a networking event and they're looking around for somebody better to talk to. Okay, type yes in the chat. You've met somebody at a networking event and they are throwing business cards at everybody without bothering to get to know them or have a conversation. You are trying to break into a group at a networking event, but people are all clinging to their friends and you feel like you can't get in. How about the person you've talked to at a networking event and they are bad-mouthing their company or their coworkers or their job? So type yes into the chat if you've experienced any of those. Type no as well if you haven't, because if you haven't, that's amazing. I personally used to hate networking, and it was for all the reasons mentioned above, and also my own discomfort at trying to break into groups and trying to meet people and feeling really like a fish out of water. I actually would do this sometimes. I would get into my clothes, I would get into my makeup, I'd get in the car, and I would decide to go stop and do an errand on the way, and then I would turn around and go back home. And that was a very common thing for me until not very long ago. So if you don't love networking, I fully understand, and I am right here with you. The good news is that we can learn to connect on a human level. And I want you to remember that you are always the face of the organization. Whether you're attending a networking event for yourself or you're attending for your company, a company doesn't have a face. The face of the organization is the people, okay? So you want to remember that you are the face of the organization, and you always need to be, representing your organization or yourself as best you can. So today we're going to talk about how to build relationships to build your business and boost your career. Sound good? I know you're going to like the next part because this is where we talk about you. We all like talking about ourselves, right? So let's talk about how we're going to prepare ourselves for networking. Because before we start talking to people and meeting people, we need to have some clarity about how we stand out. What is unique and special about our business, our organization, or ourselves as entrepreneurs, okay? Let's talk about our uniqueness. What makes us stand out? You know that there are hundreds of competing businesses with thousands of competing products and services out there. So how do you stand out from others? Well, one thing that you can do before you get into the networking environment is actually figure out how you are impacting your clients and your customers, okay? So what are the benefits to your clients and customers of what you do? It's not about the color, the shape, the size, or the statistics about what you offer. It's about the emotional impact on the people that you serve. So on the screen, you can see that we have things like comfort, belonging, security, confidence, luxury. These are things that are going to have an emotional impact on the person that you're talking to. Instead of saying there are airbags in this car, we say you can feel secure. Your children will be safe. So you see the difference between something we're just describing and something that actually creates an emotional impact. I have this great example that I found in an article a few years ago, but that I think really expresses this well. BMW had a tagline, sheer driving pleasure. Aston Martin had a tagline, power, beauty, and soul. Now, when you hear those two things, you hear power, beauty, and soul, that's really about the car. But sheer driving pleasure is about the driver, okay? So this is the good news about networking. It's not about you. And when you stop worrying about yourself and worrying about your own needs and how you're being perceived, you can focus on the other person. And that means focusing on how your products, your services, your company impacts the people that you serve. Now, let's talk about your attitude. Have you ever seen these people? Have you ever seen any of these people on the screen at a networking event? Perhaps you are one of these people. Let's talk about these attitude adjustments just for a minute. Maybe you're the person that says, I hate small talk. Now, I understand that a lot of people hate small talk, but the reality is it is a necessary part of conversation. And there's a book called The Fine Art of Small Talk, written by Deborah Fine, and she says small talk has a bad rap as the lowly stepchild of real conversation, but it serves an extremely important function. Without it, you rarely get to real conversation. She also goes on to say people who excel at small talk are experts at making others feel included, valued, and comfortable. And that goes a long way toward furthering business relationships, closing a deal, firing up a romance, or making a friend. So it doesn't matter. I'm going to be a little blunt here. It doesn't matter if small talk makes you uncomfortable or if you think it's pointless. It's really about caring about another person, about their dogs, about their kids, and it's about showing interest in them and their business and putting aside your own needs for a minute. And small talk leads to big talk. Something that you can do if you're uncomfortable with the small talk and the chit chat at an event is that you can plan ahead and just think about how you can find out who's going to be attending. Maybe there's a list of attendees that you can look at. Find out who's going to be at the event and see if they can introduce you to other people. So look for people you know and see if they can introduce you to other people. And that eliminates a little bit of the small talk when you're able to have an introduction. Now, are you the person in the middle? I'm going to get all the clients. Have you ever gone into a networking event thinking you're going to get all the clients? I want to remind you that it's about quality, not quantity. Okay, if you make 1 or 2 amazing contacts, it will be totally worth your time. But if you run around trying to meet as many people as possible and maybe you make 20 mediocre contacts, that is not going to benefit you. So really look at how to make quality contacts instead of quantity, and don't try to get on 20 different people's radar, okay? Focus on the people that you have time to meet and talk to, and look at building those relationships. There's this third person on the screen, and maybe you've encountered this person. This is the person that makes me the most uncomfortable. The person who's always looking over my shoulder for the celebrity or the big kahuna that maybe they can get on that person's radar. So they're really looking to make a break in the conversation so they can go talk to that famous person. And I'm just going to ask you, don't be that person. If that's ever happened to you, if you've been in that situation in a networking event, you know how uncomfortable it is, and you know how it makes you feel like crap, right? Now, it's okay, and just know I'm going to be kind of talking a little bit about in-person networking and a little bit about remote and online networking, because we're starting to get back into in-person networking, and we're going to be doing that again soon. So you will be back in those environments where people are looking over your shoulder. And it's okay to look around the room from time to time and kind of see who's there. And because you're in a networking event, everybody has the same goals, right? They all want to meet people. It's okay to move on. It's okay to tell a person, hey, it's been great talking to you. I'm going to go mingle. But don't make people feel unimportant. When you're talking to a person, pay attention to them, okay? And make them feel like you want to be talking to them. Okay, now we're done talking about you. Let's talk about the people that you're going to meet at this networking event. Here's a little plus about online networking, and I don't know if you've realized this. For me, in-person networking events, when I go to these events, I am terrible with remembering names. And I'm always trying to sneak a look at somebody's name tag or hope that I can get somebody to introduce me, or go over to someone and say, hey, I forgot that person's name. Can you remind me? We don't have to do that anymore, because when we're remote networking, everybody's name is on the screen. Isn't that awesome? So to me, that is one of the pros of networking remotely. Now, when you're in this networking environment, one thing that can make you feel a lot more comfortable, and I know it helps me feel more comfortable, is to help other people feel more comfortable. So for example, if you're in a group, see if you can introduce somebody to somebody else in the group, whether you're in person or whether you're online. A lot of the online networking platforms or conference platforms like Hopin or AirMeet, they have these little networking breakouts that you can sit at a virtual table with maybe 5 people. And so what I like to do is I like to look around, look for the person who's not talking, and see if I can draw them out and say, hey, so-and-so, what do you think about this topic that we're talking about? Or, hey, I don't think we've met before. Tell me a little bit about yourself. So I will take on the role of making another person feel a little bit more comfortable if I can. And in an in-person networking event, I will do the same thing. I'll just look for somebody standing alone up against a wall somewhere, and I'll go and introduce myself. It's a lot easier to introduce yourself to an individual person than it is to break into a group. So this is also a way that you can make yourself feel more comfortable. And then the same in these little networking groups online, you can also introduce people to each other. And one thing I want to mention is that there are a couple of options for networking at online conferences. Sometimes you're just in a little networking group, a little breakout, and sometimes you are actually in a speed networking round. So I'm going to talk about that in a minute, okay? So the next thing you want to do is look for common ground. What can you find in common with the people that you're talking to at this event? And I want to encourage you to talk about things that aren't business, because oftentimes it's easier to get to know somebody if you talk about personal things than about work things. Okay, so as an example on the screen, here are a couple of things about me. On the left-hand side, there's a little picture of a pathway that I like to walk in Ojai. Some people have heard of Ojai because some TV shows and movies have been filmed here. Byron Katie's Institute is here. So some people have heard of Ojai, so sometimes that becomes an interesting topic of conversation. Then the next thing on the screen, you'll see some big earrings. So I am a fan of big jewelry, and I make my own, and oftentimes we end up in a conversation about jewelry. You'll also see a teapot on the screen, and this is something that I love, is tea. So sometimes I will end up talking to people about tea or food. And then on the far right, you'll see the loves of my life, Benjamin and Ernie, who are actually Instagram celebrities. And you know what? You can never go wrong talking about people's pets. You can never go wrong talking about the 2- and 4-legged non-human critters in somebody's home, because for a lot of us, that is something we have in common, even if we don't have kids. But if you do want to talk about business, that's totally fine. There are questions you can ask in that environment that tie into the event. So you may say something like, how do you know the host of this event? Or how are you connected to this organization? Or how long have you been a member? Or what speakers have you enjoyed? Okay, so think about how you can prepare yourself with some questions about where you can find common ground with the people you're talking to, but it doesn't just have to be about business, okay? And then I want you to listen for cues. I really want you to listen for how you can make connections for people. Instead of thinking ahead to what you want to say, really be listening to what people are talking about, okay? How can you be listening for the other person's goals? How can you be listening for what they need in their business and how you can help them? Or again, it doesn't have to be about business. I've helped people find good local restaurants and other services. It doesn't have to be about business, right? I actually take a lot of notes. So another thing about online networking that's amazing is that I just open up a Word document. I just have a Word document and I type notes about the person. And this way I can remember them after the conversation is over, and then I can look for resources that might support them. And I usually tell people I'm taking notes so they know, because I'll look down and I'll say, oh, I just want you to know I'm taking notes because I'm kind of forgetful and I want to remember what we talk about. So I let people know so they understand why I'm typing while we're either talking on camera or on the phone. But the great thing about keeping these notes and having some information about what their needs are. And by the way, if you're not getting the cues from them, just ask. Just go ahead and say, how can I help you? What do you need? Because by becoming this person that has the connections, it turns out you may know this person on the left, who knows this person in the middle, who knows this person on the right, who could become your biggest client ever. So really look at how you can help people and support people and make connections for them. Now, we know that the networking is not a drive-by type event, right? It's not one and done. We don't just go to a networking event and talk to people and then leave and forget about them, or hopefully that's not what we're doing. So how are you going to stay connected to people and continue the relationship? And by the way, I'm going to ask you to type something into the chat right now. If any of you know what this is a picture of on the screen, would you type that into the chat? Because I realized when I made this slide that I'm old and that some of you may not even understand what this is a picture of. So type into the chat if you know what this is on the screen right now. I don't know, maybe the first person who types into the chat, I'll give you a little prize or something. So you want to know where people hang out. And these days, because I've moved into the digital world, I don't collect business cards anymore. When I'm at in-person events, I have stopped collecting business cards. And especially now that so much of our networking is online, we're not collecting business cards at all anymore, right? And so for me, when I go to a live event, I actually ask people what social media sites they hang out at, and then I take a picture of their name tag and I save that and then go find them later and connect with them on social media. So now if you've already typed into the chat, if you finished typing about what that last thing was on the screen, I would love for you to type into the chat, type pile if you still have a huge pile of business cards that you haven't looked at for years. Okay, so type pile into the chat if you have a bunch of business cards that you haven't looked at in years. So find out what social media sites people are hanging out on. In this case, people may be a member of an association, like for example, the PBWC. We're all here for this particular conference. So you know that you're going to be able to follow up with people at this event, right? Because most people are members of this association. I am a member of the National Speakers Association, so I like meeting people who are part of that association. Some of you might be members of ASAE or SHRM. And then of course you can see on the screen, we have all of our typical social media places like Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, Clubhouse, whatever works for you. By the way, you don't have to be everywhere. You don't have to be on every social media site, but wherever it is that you hang out the most, connect with people there and ask them where they connect or where they hang out. And then just say, I would love to stay connected, and send them a connection request. Okay. And then when you do connect, now you can send them something useful. Don't leave them hanging, but think about what you talked about. Think about what you had in common, what your connection points were, and think about how you can reach out. So you'll see on the screen, I have food because I end up talking to a lot of people about food. So I might end up sending them a recipe or a website that I really liked that I thought they might enjoy. I might read something on Harvard Business Review. I might send them an article. I may send them a goofy cat video if it turns out that we're both cat lovers. So again, it doesn't have to be about business. Think about what you can send them that will be interesting or fun or a good resource for them. I have a client who is an oral historian, and we recently worked on a presentation together where she was sharing the stories of a particular group of people. And so into my inbox came an invitation to a workshop on ethical storytelling for nonprofits. And so I thought it would be really useful for me, but I thought she also might enjoy it as well because of the work that she's doing. So I forwarded it to her. It was completely outside of both of our circles, but we both attended. And it was really fun for me to be able to send something to my client to help her further her speaking skills. And it wasn't about me, and it wasn't about making more money in my business. It was just about being supportive and sending a resource. Okay, I feel like I shouldn't have to say this to you, but I'm going to say it anyway. Please do not spam people. Just because somebody has connected with you on LinkedIn or given you their business card, that does not give you permission to add them to your mailing list, okay? There are CAN spam laws that oversee this, but besides that, it's just plain rude. Now, I know that a lot of you have been on the other side of this. You've been the one receiving the spam, but some of you may also be the ones sending the spam. So let me share a quick story with you to kind of illustrate what it's like to be on the side of the receiving of the spam. I recently got a friend request from somebody on LinkedIn. He did not try to pitch me anything, but he said, we went to the same school. I'd love to connect. Let me know how I can help you. And so I actually responded because when he said, let me know how I can help you, and I saw that he was a real estate guy, I just wanted to make it really clear that I'm not interested in real estate. So I wrote back and I said, I would love to connect, happy to connect. Just please don't send me anything about real estate because I have zero interest in real estate. Now, he didn't respond to that, so I actually never even connected with him because I forgot about the conversation and just went on with my life. A couple days later, I got an email in my inbox, not on LinkedIn, in my inbox. And he had sent me a marketing email from his mailing list about real estate in LA. I don't live in LA, and I explicitly said I have zero interest in real estate. And yet he went to LinkedIn, got my email address, put it into his mailing list, and emailed me. So I'll be honest here, I reported him to LinkedIn, and I also reported him to his mailing list provider. I am never going to use his services, and I am never going to refer him to anybody. Please don't spam. I really feel like I shouldn't have to say this, but please always ask permission if you want to add people to your mailing list. Now, sending people one individual email, one personal email, nothing wrong with that. It's not the same as adding people to a mailing list. So I really want to make sure you understand the difference, okay? And then I have a bonus tip for you. Remember when we talked earlier, I talked earlier about these little speed networking rounds that you might end up in at an event? I have recently been doing a lot of teaching and retreats on micro presentations because I'm seeing that in this new remote environment a lot of us are presenting in, we're being invited to share our expertise in smaller and smaller containers. And when you think about it, networking is basically a micro presentation, right? You have to get your message across in a really short amount of time. And if you're in a speed networking round that's only 2 minutes long, you're going to get cut off if you spend too much time. So look at creating for yourself a professional introduction, what some people call an elevator speech, but I don't really want you to be making a speech at people. So create for yourself a professional introduction that is 7 to 9 seconds long, okay? 7 to 9 seconds. That way, you don't spend a whole minute of the 2 minutes that you might get in a speed networking round just talking about yourself. Take that 7 to 9 seconds and just get that out of the way so that you can spend the rest of the time actually having a conversation and getting to know people. Now, I would love to hear what you would like to add to your networking toolkit when you go to your next networking event, okay? What are you going to do differently at the next networking event that you attend, whether it's virtual, whether it's in person? I would love to know what your number one takeaway is from this talk, what your number one aha was from listening to these tips. So if you would write in the chat what your number one takeaway or aha is, it would be really helpful for me, because when we come back later and have some Q&A, I will have an idea of what you found helpful in this presentation. So I'm going to recap really quickly. I want you to think about the fact that people don't resonate with business owners or entrepreneurs or business representatives who come at networking from a me, gimme approach, okay? What we want to do is really focus on learning about the other person and really look at this as a long-term relationship that we are building. It's a long game, and really look at how we can help them grow their business. The reality is sometimes this person may hire you, but a lot of times they won't. A lot of times that person just doesn't need what you have. But if you can focus on being a connector and being a giver rather than being a taker, you are going to stay on people's radar for a long time. So when we get back to networking, so whether we're doing networking online, which a lot of us are right now, or whether we are back doing networking with masks, I want you to think of approaching networking from a place of service. Set goals for yourself. Have positive expectations, okay? So check your attitude. Have positive expectations of serving others. You will completely change the energy in the room, whether it's in person or whether it's virtual. People will want to get to know you better. Be a giver and everything will change. And the last thing I want to share is that networking doesn't have to feel like work. It doesn't have to be stressful. You don't have to feel like you need to get all the business and all the clients from this one networking event, okay? It's a long game. And go ahead and just enjoy yourself. Have conversations, chat with people, build those relationships. You will see that when you take care of the relationships, your business will take care of yourself. So go make connections, and I will see you later on in the Q&A. Thanks.
Up next is our interactive hour. Visit the Schedule tab to take advantage of these live networking opportunities. Sessions include meeting with exhibitors in their booths, joining a topic-based networking room, or attending a Q&A session with a seminar speaker. Or if you'd also like a more one-on-one networking experience, just head to the People tab. Filter the attendee network by interests and request to meet. Be sure to visit the Bank of the West booth to learn more about our platinum sponsor, Bank of the West. And if you haven't already done so, please consider donating to the PBWC Scholarship Program. Thanks so much, and see you soon for our next session.